And what you do is you buckle up and make it work with every ounce of your body.
And I will tell you, members, that many of you, well, when you get home, will be asked the question, couldn't we do better?
As it is what the people of my district sent me here to do. All around, this budget is both a betrayal of the public's trust and a failure at its highest level.
With no time to spare, Texas lawmakers passed the state budget for the next 2 years. Now we'll start to see how these historic cuts really impact you here at home. Next, here on Session 11.
From KXAN Austin News, this is Session 11, live interactive breakdowns, insights, interviews, and our weekly roundtable discussion. You're watching Session 11 on KXAN Austin News.
Good morning, I'm Robert Hadlock. Thank you for joining us here for our last Sunday of the legislative session. This weekend, state lawmakers made history with the largest spending cuts Texas has ever seen. KXAN political reporter Josh Hinkle joins us live. And Josh, tomorrow's the last day of the session, and many folks are worried they might not wrap up the budget in time.
Well, yeah, this was pretty much the last day yesterday for lawmakers had to pass a budget without coming back for a special session. But after fierce negotiations, both the House and the Senate have voted in favor of the budget, sending it on to the governor's desk. The overall plan spends a whopping $172 billion. That's about $15 billion less than our current budget. Medicaid took a huge hit with more than $4 billion in cuts, and it also leaves public education about $4 billion short.
I think that this budget is a prudent budget. It's one that I can support, and it's one that I can go back home and explain to my constituents.
Our legacy will center around the folks who want to go to college, and we slam the doors in their faces. The children whose exposure has been limited, and they need pre-K to catch up, and we said no.
Now, with the budget out of the way, there are still some other big issues that could keep lawmakers here over the summer. Congressional redistricting maps, an overhaul of the Texas Windstorm Insurance Agency, and the big issue this weekend, school finance. However, negotiators have reached a deal with that one. It's just a matter of getting both chambers to agree in the remaining 2 days of the session. Robert?
That school funding agreement Josh just mentioned means some major hits to local schools. You can check out these numbers now. Over the next 2 years, the Austin ISD will get $95 million less from the state than it does right now. Schools in Round Rock will lose $38 million. The Eanes ISD will have to deal with $8.5 million less money. Elsewhere around the Central Texas area, Leander ISD is losing $37 million. Hayes Consolidated down $18 million. It's a $17 million figure in Pflugerville and $4 million less to spend in Bastrop. To go in depth on how your child's school district will lose, check out the education funding story at our homepage, kxan.com. And while you're there, click on the On Politics tab at the top. You'll go straight to our special political site, where you can check out my latest blog post. Plus, click the blue bar at the top to chat with us. Our panel will field your questions later here live on our program. Since January, we've been lucky enough to have some of the legislative players in the state, some of the biggest ones here on our program, showing insight and sometimes causing a stir at the state capitol. Here's a look back at some of our best newsmakers.
And many times the children who are adopted by these single-gender families want the birth certificate to adequately describe their parents.
It's a GLBT issue. It's a gay, lesbian, bisexual, transvestite issue. And
Transgender.
I'm sorry. Transgender and transvestite. It's a, you know, you cross-dress and you're a transvestite.
What you say is you just want to disenfranchise the people of color, the elderly, people of a different ethnic origin. What is that but code word for you're a racist?
No one is calling Patricia Harless a racist. And while the debate was very passionate, I mean, you have to understand the context by which some of these members, what their ancestors went through and the passion that they feel. And I think they're entitled to speak.
I really believe that Republicans feel that this will help in trying to close the door on voter fraud.
For the most part, that's how politicians view the redistricting process, and that's what they're sitting around drawing maps to try to do.
Well, because we're constitutionally told to do so. I mean,
we're not constitutionally told to do that.
How do you?
We're constitutionally told to redraw them.
To redraw them, yeah.
And then it becomes an exercise in self-preservation.
I'm a conservative, and I suppose you would call yourself a liberal, or?
I'd prefer not to brand.
Not to brand yourself. Okay.
I'd prefer not you branding me. How's that?
I'm sorry. I apologize.
I need to make a decision in June whether I'm going to run for the U.S. Senate in 2012 or whether I'm going to stay right where I am and run for governor in 2014.
The governor has chosen to attack me even in his State of the State address and to ignore the fact that there were 12 people behind this amendment, not just one.
With boots on the ground and technology and the appropriate resources there to secure that border, then we can have a legitimate and appropriate and constructive discussion about immigration policy.
Maybe the governor has greater pressure or influence on House members' decisions when it comes to the rainy day fund. Is that so?
I did not want to put House members to make that tough decision to use the rainy day fund without the governor saying it was okay.
You can tie me down and torture me, but I'm still not going to talk about what to cut.
That's right, I'm not, because you do a fine job of talking about cutting, Arlene.
There's businessmen out there that are just struggling to get by, and to raise taxes on them in these tough economic times is just not the right thing to do.
See, but we're not talking about raising taxes. We're talking about using the rainy day fund.
Was able to use or get legislation passed in the House to use $3.1 billion of the rainy day fund. Probably the hardest thing I've ever done in the legislature.
My colleagues are willing to use it to avoid embarrassing themselves and saving their political careers, but they're not willing to use that fund in order to save our schools and our seniors' nursing homes.
The House has no stomach to go into the rainy day fund further than that.
The legislature has to do what the people have said and live within available revenue. Set those priorities.
So you're in favor of some fundamental changes?
We do need fundamental changes, but Arlene's kind of playing a little shell game here.
I don't support the agenda that the gay, lesbian, transvestite, I'm sorry, what was that word?
It's gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender community.
Transgender community.
GLBT.
GLBT. I don't support their agenda.
When you hear the testimony of these children about how important this legislation is to them, it really changes hearts and minds.
And as we wrap up Session 11 today, lawmakers are also wrapping up things at the Capitol in the final days.
Amazing grace.
And in a session where every minute matters, they still took time for a tribute on this Memorial Day weekend. That's coming up.
That saved us.